wrestling fans, when we look back at the mid 90s and SummerSlam, when we look back at the mid 90s and WWE pay per views, period, the one thing that we can agree with is they had a very underwhelming, kind of boring, just flat card. And then they had one or two matches that really stuck out and wowed us. Right, wrestling fans? Really caught our eyes. But they, for the most part, were just kind of skippable shows. I mean, they really were. They were skippable shows. Now, they had substance as far as some of the mid or undercard did have some meaning behind it, but they were underwhelming. They were kind of boring as far as match quality. This show wasn't anything new. 1996 SummerSlam wasn't anything new. It was the same as every other pay-per-view back in the mid-90s. You had the Boiler Room Brawl between Mankind and The Undertaker. And you had It's Time, it's Vader time. Along with James E. Cornette taking on Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship. Would it be James E. Cornette's night having his guy, Vader, become the WWE Champion? And other than that, this show really didn't have anything to wow us, to get us to tune in. Once we go back and really watch it and digest and invest in it, this show really didn't have anything. Yeah, some people might say, well, it had tag team championship matchup. They were building up Sid for his eventual title reign starting at Survivor Series of that year. A couple other things, right? But in reality, this pay-per-view had nothing other than those two matches. And we're going to go into that on this review. First off, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a subscriber. If you're not, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell for all notifications. It would be much appreciated. Lots of things go on this channel. Raw and SmackDown live reviews, vlogs from time to time, my hunt for Bigfoot. I just did a wildlife adventure. Go and check that out as well, amongst other things. It would be much appreciated. Fun and hard work goes into this channel. Join my journey here on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter at 2007 Webby, where you can follow me on Raw and SmackDown Live. When they come up, I'm always tweeting or putting stuff out there while the show goes on. So that would be much appreciated as well. Now, 1996 SummerSlam. When we talk about SummerSlam, Jim Ross, Mr. Perfect, and Vincent Kennedy McMahon was calling the action. And, the one thing I'm going to mention that I have been noticing throughout all these old classic pay-per-views that they just don't do today is they actually invest their time into the matches a lot more. And that's one thing that I wish they would do more today. WWE did do a good job back then investing their time into the matches back then. I like that Jim Ross, Mr. Perfect, and Vince McMahon. They always did. They always tried to put over the matches then. Whoever was in the match. Really enjoyed that. But they had a pretty good dynamic as well for this pay-per-view. First matchup, Owen Hart versus Savio Vega. Kind of played up the kind of broken arm or wrist of Owen Hart, like he was going to use the cast. Kind of took me back a little bit of how they did Cowboy Bob Orton, because of how long Cowboy Bob Orton had his cast on his arm. Now, Owen Hart didn't have his on his arm that long, but they were also worried that Owen Hart was going to use the cast on Savio Vega and that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what happened in this matchup. They were on the top rope, and Owen Hart, when they came down, Savio Vega landed on the cast, and that knocked out Savio Vega. And, of course, Sharpshooter taps out Savio Vega. So, Owen Hart victorious. Mankind in the boiler room. Critic licking pipes, all different types of stuff. Mankind, very, very good on the mic. Could talk people into the arena. Scary, quite honestly. You know, his promos back before he put on the white shirt and had the tie and had Sacco and all that stuff, really scared kids and freaked out kids. And he did a great job at that. And he really brought out a new layer into this boiler room brawl matchup by that promo, saying what he was going to do to The Undertaker. Really enjoyed that promo. The Body Donna took on the Smoking Guns, took on the Godwins, took on the new and improved Rockers. Yeah, this is what I'm going to say about this. You know how WWE always has these matches these days where they can get all the tag teams in there, where they either think this gives all the tag teams a moment to shine, or they're just trying to give everybody a chance to be on the card. This was it. That's all this is. Now, me personally, I think this would have worked a lot better if the Smoking Guns, who was managed by Sonny and was the tag team champions, would have had just a singles tag team matchup, a regular tag team matchup with one of these tag teams for the tag team championships. WWE didn't want to go down that road in SummerSlam of 1996, but the Smoking Guns come out victorious. The British Bulldog took on Psycho Sid. There's not much to say about this matchup. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't exhilarating or anything of that nature. This was to put Sid over because they knew the direction going into Survivor Series, quite frankly. I think they already knew that direction, and that was Sid taking the WWE Championship from Shawn Michaels. Therefore, Sid needed this win. Wildman Mark Merrill, along with Sable, took on Gold Dust. Gold Dust. Victorious in this match. Okay. The only thing I can say is, it's a shame how Mark Merrill's character ended up. And Goldust's character back in the 90s really turned out. It was a joy for us to watch how that turned out. How twisted that character ended up being. But Mark Merrill's character, once he broke away from Sable, just ended up being very stale, and I really didn't like it. But as far as this match and how this pay-per-view came out, it's just like whatever between these two superstars. Farouk came out with Sonny, and he wanted the Intercontinental Championship. Now, the whole backstory of this is because he put Ahmed Johnson on the shelf. Now, this was when Farouk first came to the WWE, and he looked like something out of American Gladiators or something like that, because he had some blue helmet on, blue vest on, and all this stuff. And Farouk, I'm glad he got rid of this, number one. But look, Sonny said she wanted gold. And if there's one thing that I can say about Farouk in the WWE is I think it's a shame that he didn't hold more championships than what he did. Because when we look back at Farouk, there's only two things that we really remember. And that is the Nation of Domination and APA. We don't look back at the tag team championships as much or anything of that nature. So I think he should have won, more titles in the WWE. I think that would have been more special. But he wanted the IC belt. And of course, we know what direction WWE went in with that later on down the road. Jerry the King Lawler versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Jim Ross, I do believe, used the word embarrassment in this pay-per-view. And I do believe I agree with good old JR about this matchup. This match was an embarrassment. Not only for Jake the Snake Roberts, but for everybody in attendance and for everybody watching at home. They built up this story because of Jake's problems that he had. Well, that's fine and dandy if that's how Jake was trying to overcome it, help get over these problems. But you take this alcohol, bottles of alcohol or whatever, and you have Jerry the King Lawler dump it in Jake's face and all this stuff, and you take one of the bottles of alcohol and you thrust it in Jake's throat and all this garbage. It was a train wreck. Absolutely horrible. Hated it. Terrible. And that's all I got to say about it. The one thing, no, I take that back. The one thing I will say is they introduced Mark Henry. And they did a good job starting Mark Henry's first rivalry with this. Because Mark Henry came down from the announce table and stopped Jerry King Lawler from doing any more damage to Jake the Snake Roberts. So I really enjoyed that. But this was bad. The Undertaker versus Mankind. Boiler Room Brawl. Now, this really when you think about The Undertaker versus Mankind in a Boiler Room Brawl, you don't remember the match as much. I mean, you really don't. Granted, it was brutal, it was barbaric. I mean, there was one time in the match where after they get out of the boiler room, they're by the ring, and the Undertaker does this to the ring ropes, and Mankind falls flat on the concrete floor, not where the padding is. So, I mean, there were some spots on there that was pretty bad. You think of one thing, though. You think of Paul Bearer turning his back on The Undertaker. After 6 years, 6.5 years, something like that. 5.5, 6.5, something like that. Of a great relationship between Paul Bearer and The Undertaker. And Paul Bearer turns his back and joins Mankind. And when I was watching this matchup, a lot of people remember Paul Bearer turning his back and having, The Undertaker look at Paul Bearer in the back and not hand over the urn as the final nail on the coffin of their relationship. That's not what really sealed the deal and what I remember the most out of this. What I remember the most out of this, what kind of sealed the deal and was the final whack, like, forget you, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, was when Paul Bearer took the urn and hit The Undertaker right over the head with the urn. And you could hear it echo throughout the arena when that urn cracked over The Undertaker's head. Paul Bearer shines it up and hands it over to Mankind. And Mankind is victorious. And they go on a pretty good rivalry, where we see Revenge of Taker, where we see Buried Alive, where we see all these type of good matches between these two guys. Before we see the Hell in a Cell matchup. So, pretty decent rivalry. And of course, we see Paul Bearer and The Undertaker with Kane and all that stuff. And then Paul Bearer comes back for Ministry of Darkness. And we all know where all that leads to. But whatever the case, this was a great contest and a good story behind Undertaker, Paul Bearer, Mankind leading into the future. Vader versus Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship. This should have been the other way around. Vader should have won this contest. I, for one, did not like it. Did not like this match at all. Now, they did give Vader his shots. Vader was dominant in this after Shawn Michaels did do some good stuff at the opening, his high-flying spots. Then Vader came over and just took control of the match. But in reality, this match had way too many restarts. It was like Vader won, Vader won, Vader won, Vader won, and then Shawn Michaels comes back and wins completely in the end. Vader wins by count out, Vader wins by disqualification, and Shawn Michaels wins ultimately in the end. Now, this tells me one thing. WWE, number one, they wanted to get the rivalry completely done and out of the way. If they were going to have this go all the way through till Survivor Series, and let's say Survivor Series was when Vader was going to win the WWE Championship, this was the result of maybe the other two pay-per-views, right? The count out and disqualification. That's number one. Number two, they wanted to protect Vader a couple times before Shawn Michaels came in and just ultimately beat him. That's number two. Because really, it was Jim Cornette's fault in the end. Because Jim Cornette was the one that kept on restarting the match. Oh, if you got any guts. If you got this. If you got that. So, it's difficult how you look at this. But in any result, how they did this matchup, fact is, Vader should have won. The rivalry should have continued. And that's it. Shawn shouldn't have been the winner of this matchup. But it is kind of understandable in another sense why Shawn won, because he hasn't had that long of a title reign. He just won it at WrestleMania. And, back then they had lengthy title reigns. They didn't just change them like that. I'm saying that, and the two champions they've had, they have now, one's held it for over 434 days, and the other one's held it for 300 plus days, going on almost a year now. But they always had a lengthy title reign, back then. And as we know, Shawn Michaels held it till Survivor Series of that year. But Vader should have won this contest. No doubt about that. But you all let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. Tell me who you think should have won this matchup. Tell me what you think about this pay-per-view in general. If you agree with me on any of these matches, in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to do everything I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. And go back and watch anything you've missed. It is live on the channel right now. And of course, tune in tomorrow for my What's Hot in the World of Professional Wrestling. And until I see you again, this is Webby, and I will catch you on the other side. Talk to you later.